October Girls presents The Break-In, where the most basic of nightmares comes true, where danger lurks even in the safest of places. A familiar right turn, and Mandy counted the seconds until a jolt. Their sedan lurched over an aggressive speed bump, and Mandy knew that Dave had finally turned onto their street, leading home. Dave always managed to misjudge his speed here, and after 6 hours of driving, Mandy was certain he didn't quite care as the underside of the car scraped against the pavement. She was fully reclined in her seat, a coat laid over her head and chest, blocking out the flutter of streetlights. After a long weekend of hikes, cozy campfires, and endless s'mores, Mandy was ready to crawl from her makeshift cot in the car to their own soft, warm bed. Another right turn, a slight roll of the driveway, and they arrived at their bricked suburban home, complete with a whitewashed porch, accented by a crisply painted maroon door. The car shuddered to a stop. "Wake up, sleepyhead." Dave tugged her coat down and ruffled her hair. "Time for some beauty sleep, hun. You're starting to look like a wild and dangerous animal." Mandy groaned and peeked over the edge of her coat. The clock on the dash read 11:34 p.m. "Hardy har har. Can't you just carry me to bed? I'm so tired." "Come on, you're a big girl. You've got this. It's not like you drove the entire way back or anything." "What happened to that big, strong man I married?" She chided back, stretching in her seat. Silence filled the car, and Mandy watched as Dave stared at their front door. She sat up, the coat slipping off her chest and into her lap. A trickle of unease pooled in her stomach. "Babe?" Nothing. Mandy felt the hairs on her arms rise. "Dave?" "Stay in the car." Dave looked at her, his eyes wide and mouth pulled tight. He quickly unfastened his seatbelt and turned to push through the various bags piled in the back seat. "Babe, you're scaring me." He pulled away with the multi-use knife they used for camping and cracked open the car door. "Listen to me. Just stay in the car until I say so," he ordered. "I need to check something." "What?" The question hung in the air as Dave quietly shut the door behind him. Mandy fumbled with her own seatbelt, blood rushing in her ears. Through the front windshield, she could see Dave creep from the driver's side of the car towards their front door. He looked at her again and pointed firmly at the car, mouthing, "Stay." Mandy trembled, helpless as Dave snuck up toward the door and, with one foot, pushed it open. Someone had broken into their home. Cursing herself, Mandy scrambled for her phone and, with shaking hands, dialed 911. 3 seconds of dial tone stretched for an eternity. Then, a staticky, feminine voice answered.
911, what's your emergency?
"Our house was broken into. My husband just went inside. We need the police to come as soon as possible. Please, hurry."
Yes, ma'am. Can you please confirm your address for me?
145 Granger Road in the University District. Please, my husband just went into the house.
You're going to be okay, ma'am. We are dispatching an officer to you right now. He's 3 minutes away. Please stay on the line.
The distant sound of feverish typing crackled through the phone. Mandy fought back tears as panic welled up in her chest.
You said your husband went inside?
"Yes, he has a knife. I don't know what he was thinking. Oh my God, what if they're still there?"
Do you see anyone? Are there lights on?
No. Oh my God, Dave.
Where are you right now?
"I'm out in the car in the driveway. Please, just send someone, please." Mandy's heart pressed against her ribs. She couldn't seem to draw in a full breath.
Ma'am, I'm going to need you to take a few deep breaths. Do you see your husband now?
"No, not yet. I can't see him."
Do you hear anything?
"No! Please, please, is the officer almost here? Oh my God."
He is going as fast as he can, ma'am.
Mandy shut her eyes, forcing a deep breath into her chest. She hugged herself, rocking back and forth in the seat. Suddenly, the car door swung open, and she screamed, "Hun, it's me. It's just me." Dave pulled her into his arms, and she clung to him for a moment before pushing away. "You idiot! What if someone was in there? What if they had a gun, Dave? What was your plan? Why couldn't you have just waited for the police? You could have died." Dave raised his hands defensively. "Hun, no one's inside. I just needed to check. I know. I know. It was stupid. You called 911, right?" "Of course I did." "Let me talk to the dispatcher." She shoved the phone at Dave's hand as a garbled voice on the speaker called out,
Ma'am, are you okay? Ma'am?
"Hello, this is Dave O'Brien. You were just talking to my wife."
Do you hear anything?
"Yes, I'm no longer in the house."
Can you go as fast as you can now?
"Yes, we're safe."
Please, it's the officer almost here.
"No, I didn't see anyone."
Can you go as fast as you can?
"Yes, there was someone here." A shiver ran through Mandy's spine at those words. Dave continued, "I see. The officer is on his way. Thank you. We will wait in the driveway." Mandy crumpled to the ground as waves of nausea washed over her. Head in her hands, she barely heard Dave end the call with the dispatcher. He sat down behind her, encircling her frame in a large hug, planting a soft kiss on the back of her head. "It's going to be okay, hon. I promise. The worst is over." "No, it's not. How are we supposed to go back into our home? I can't do it, Dave." "Hun, I'm right here. We'll protect you. It will be okay, I promise." Red and blue lights flashed as an officer pulled into their driveway. Two cops stepped out and immediately approached. "Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien?" Andy nodded. "My name is Officer Randall. My partner and I were informed that your house was broken into." Dave confirmed. "Yes, officer. I didn't see anyone inside, but it's a mess. Not sure what was stolen." The officer nodded, drawing his pistol. "Stay here while we look inside." The minutes crawled by as Mandy watched the lights turn on in her house, one by one. Finally, one of the officers stepped outside, his face grim. "Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien, please come with me." Dave pulled Mandy to her feet, and they walked into the shambles of their once tidy home. All semblance of safety and protection now shattered. She was utterly unprepared for the chaos that greeted her. Lotion, food, and oil were smeared on every visible surface. Walls, floors, doors, and even their leather couch was now sticky and slick. Shoes with the soles torn out littered the floor. Electronics with their wiring knotted in a tangle were stacked in odd piles all over the living room. Annie stepped carefully through the wreckage of her home, tears threatening to spill. Suddenly, all her fear boiled into rage. How dare someone do this to them? What was their goal? "Mr. O'Brien, do you mind walking through the house with me just so we can document it for the report?" Dave nodded, squeezing Mandy's shoulders before stepping away. It was several hours before the police left. Mandy was starting to regret letting Dave talk her out of leaving to sleep at a nearby hotel. "Hun, the police checked the house. I checked the house. Everything's fine. Whoever was here already got what they wanted. I really want to sleep in my own bed tonight, and then we can take care of this shit show tomorrow morning." Mandy bit the inside of her cheek, trying to find a way to counter her husband's logic. But she couldn't think of anything. However, she couldn't shake the unease, couldn't quite quiet the voice in her head whispering that something was wrong. Mandy made her way to the master bedroom, the only unmolested part of the house. Numb, Mandy slipped into their bed, not even caring to change. Moments later, Dave turned off the lights and pushed between the covers as well. He had found old golf clubs and placed a heavy-headed iron up against the nightstand. At this moment, Mandy deeply wished they had a gun and wondered where they could buy one tomorrow morning. She fell into a trance, watching the alarm clock on her bedside table slowly turn from 2:58 a.m. to 3:12 a.m. Sleep was impossible. A creak, then a groan, but not from her, and not from Dave. Mandy felt her body stiffen. Every hair stood on end. Sweat immediately beaded on her forehead. She didn't even dare to breathe. Another creak, another groan, like a wounded animal eked out from under the bed. Slowly, she turned her head to Dave, only to find him staring back at her. His eyes were as wide as saucers. This was it.
The moment from every childhood nightmare Mandy had ever had, but she wasn't a child.
She was a grown woman laying next to her husband. This wasn't a nightmare. This was horribly real. It was happening. Dave inched his hand to his face, placing a finger over his lips. Then he slowly began to shift his weight over to grab the golf club. A spring creaked under the movement, and they both instantly froze in place. A growl erupted from under them, and suddenly a terrible scratching like
Claws tearing through fabric
echoed in the room. It was more than Mandy can take, and she vaulted from their bed. Dave was a step behind her. They raced through the front door and slammed it shut.
Wake the neighbors and get the police back here as fast as you can.
Dave roared, guarding the front door. In her bare feet, Mandy sprinted over to the neighbor's house and began pounding on the front door, screaming for them to open up. Blessedly, she saw a light turn on through the front window, and a bewildered face emerged. 3:42 a.m., the time the police came screeching back up the driveway. The second time in one night. Mandy had already vomited in the grass and was dry heaving over her mess. Dave was loudly arguing with the officer, insisting that they didn't own a cat.
There was chatter over the radio, and the officer stepped away from Dave to make a call.
Within a few minutes, an ambulance arrived at their house. 2 officers busted through the front door, each firmly restraining a wriggling form. It was a young woman, visibly strung out, foaming from her mouth, and screaming curses. Oh my God. Mandy felt her entire world tilt on its axis, and she spat up bile again. Once the woman was restrained and examined, an officer approached them. Do you recognize this woman? Dave threw his hands up, exasperated, and said, Absolutely not. Why would we know who this is?
She's obviously insane.
Sir, I just wanted to confirm. We have not been able to identify her yet. The medic believes she is under some sort of influence of a drug, possibly meth. Also, we found her under your bed with this. The officer presented them with a knife, their boning knife from a set of 12. Mandy felt the ground wobble. She was digging her way through the mattress and had already cut through it by the time we arrived. If you hadn't left the house when you did, Mandy couldn't hear anymore. Everything was a whirl around her, spiraling into a void. Before she passed out, she thought, so, there are such things as monsters under the bed. This rendition is inspired by a true story. In July 2014, Brian and Bridget O'Neill of Seattle, Washington, returned to their home to find it completely ransacked. After filing a police report, they went to sleep for the night, only to be awakened shortly after by animal noises and scratching from under their bed. A 27-year-old woman was found, using a knife to carve her way out. The unidentified woman reportedly told police she had been on a meth rampage for several days. The woman has been detained, and the O'Neills escaped a very close brush with death. The October Girls would like to remind everyone listening that the next time you hear something strange from under your bed, there might be something there, after all.